Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. Without ratings and warning labels, knowing which books are appropriate for your children to read is like navigating wild terrain without a map and a compass. I don't know about you, but I have been burned more than once handing my child a book that I thought was clean and appropriate for them to read. I'm a fellow mom, educator, reading specialist, and literary enthusiast trying to find great books for my children and yours to read. If you are looking for a real review from a mom with a biblical worldview, then welcome and enjoy this week's book review. This week's book review is Cracking Time by David Meyer. And this is a middle school mystery full of adventure and intrigue. The story follows four characters, Andy, Trish, Felix, and Dora. As the story opens, Meyer sort of sets the scene and the stage for all four characters as they're addicted to their devices and the events that lead their parents to signing them up for Camp Digi-Detox. Their stories collide once they reach Camp Digi-Detox and they realize that they actually know each other from their neighborhood that they all used to live in. And though much has changed since that time for each of them. And so it's definitely a very cute story. I absolutely enjoyed it. My understanding is I think that it's going to be a series. But before I get into too many more details of my thoughts and all of that about the story, I do want to read a little bit of the story to you just to give you sort of an idea of the writing style. And so the narrative structure of this story, like I mentioned, like there's four different characters. And so the story in the chapters are different characters' perspectives. So this one's Andy, chapter 1. The ground vanishes beneath my feet. I have the oddest sensation of falling, and then splash. My body slams into the coldest water I've ever felt. The river. I must have walked right off the bank without realizing it. My head goes under, then resurfaces. Help, I scream. Andy, comes Dad's distant reply. Andy! Frantically, I try to get my waterlogged sneakers down. Gopher River isn't deep, so I manage to dig my heels into the soft silt, but only for a moment. The current rips me loose, and I hurtle toward the middle of the channel. From there, I sail downstream, and all the while I'm pressing my screen, trying to hit that stupid turn on cloud data button. Right about now, you're probably thinking my priorities are screwed up, that I should forget about the phone and instead save myself. But you see, it's not that simple. And the rest of the chapter kind of leads back into where he is that moment. A lot of personality, definitely an engaging way to open the story. I was definitely kind of hooked onto the premise of the story and reading that. A little background for the characters is that they all used to live in this town called Infinity Point. Weird stuff happens in this small town, but the weirdest thing of all is when they're forced to move because the governor has sold the town to a man named Jason Pitts, who plans to build sort of an amusement attraction on the town. Now, these long lost friends spend a majority of their time online building their accounts, trying to be the best online influencer, trying to join a hacking community, or advancing in their online gameplay with a world that's like really separate from their reality. So all of them are kind of living in their own four lives. The big twist, so in the story, they're living these four lives. And of course, their parents are concerned. Issues happen in all of them that lead their parents to then putting them in Digi-Detox for over a month. And so that's where they sort of converge back together, as I was mentioning in the opening. So the big twist, though, is that Jason Pitts does not plan to actually build on the land that he has been given for this amusement. He is in search of 2 secret items that will allow him to actually go back in time and stop his father's death. Camp Digi-Detox, which Jason is hosting and paying for, is all an illusion. He is using the children to play a game in hopes that they will help break the code to the 2 items that he's looking for, which are buried somewhere in Infinity Point. So while at Digi-Detox, Andy, Trish, Felix, and Dora, they reconnect. They realize that disconnecting can actually help them in all the ways that they have been missing, and that a connection that the internet cannot fill. So without spoiling too much of the story, I really did enjoy it a lot. I did not want to put it down. Felix hacks into the system for the wordplay game that they're forced to participate in for Digi-Detox. And as he begins looking around, They specifically, between what he's hacked into and he's looking at, and then they decide to start looking around in the facilities to find their actual phones. What they uncover is way more than they expected, and they learn exactly what Jason Pitts is up to. And the real question, though, is can they stop him before he uncovers the last two pieces and changes time and their lives forever? There are some things that are worth mentioning and some quotes. I want to encourage you to go to my website at holdingsteadfastreaders.com. You're going to find that information specifically there. Some things that I thought were worth mentioning in the story, some quotes that I thought were worth mentioning. One of the things with this book, so David Meyer does weave in some Christian and biblical elements into the story, not overtly or too much. If you're wanting to maybe give this to more secular students, but he does do a beautiful job of just sort of presenting the gospel in a very clear way. And I definitely appreciate that. And I know it's hard for parents to find books that will do that, but also will have fun and engaging stories that our children can sort of grab onto and enjoy and have fun with, but are also going to bring in those elements and themes. And so that's a great thing. Rob Badorf does that, and some of the things that I've presented. And then you also see in this particular book by David Meyer. So in the end, the mystery is solved. The elements of the children were looking for and the things that happen, they all get changed for the better. For example, like Trish was the one who wanted to be the social influencer. And so she becomes less obsessed with her appearance and a less desire of being this influencer. Other thing that parents are going to love from the story is that there isn't any profanity. And then, like I said, Meyer weaves in some of that scripture as they are trying to ponder what to do or how to handle situations. One thing I do think it would be good for parents to just be aware of, but also in the story, is that there could be a little bit more introspection for the parents. And so in this, it was definitely very much focused on the children. They can kind of see a little bit of hypocrisy that's a little bit mentioned as they think that their parents are always on their devices, but they can't be on their devices. But let's be honest, how many times are we on our devices more than we should be, even though we're telling our children to not be on their devices too? I know I'm guilty as charged for some of that. But one of the things, too, in this particular book is that in almost each case of the children, their parents are also super busy, or at least that's the way that they're presented. And then they don't have time for their children, so they're on their phones. And so I just think as a parent, something for us to also, think about. It's important to also consider the type of example that we're setting for our children, and do we have healthy boundaries? So I think that's a great book to just kind of open up the conversation about that. Do we all have those actual, real, authentic connections and not just things that are digital? We want to make sure that our children feel more connected to real people in their actual lives than their digital ones and their online connections and friends. I really enjoyed this story. I am looking forward to a sequel or reading more from David Meyer. And so if you are looking for something that's a middle grade fiction that has a little bit of mystery and intrigue, has a sort of Christian themes that they're going to pull in that your children are going to see. And also maybe we'll have them question how much, time that they spend on the internet or on phones, and just the value of real connections with real people. Then I encourage you to check out Cracking Time by David Meyer. I hope that this book review has been helpful for you and that you will join me next week for another book review.